Hi, it's Krista at the Secret Yarnery. Welcome to our new crochet along for 2026, Year of the Granny. If you are looking for a stress-free, easy, no pressure crochet along, this is for you. It is a year full of super easy and fun granny square projects and granny stitch projects that you can decide to do or not. There will be almost one every Sunday, so you can pop in and see what the new tutorial is for that week, what we're working on. And if you want to know in advance what that is, join my newsletter. I will be emailing the materials you need and what it is to my email list every Thursday. So that's a good way so that you are prepared for the goodness that comes out on Sunday. As part of Granny of the Year, I challenge you to make a granny square of your scraps of yarn that you have used this year. So every ball of yarn, not every ball of yarn, like if you used 8 balls of yarn for a blanket, not all the yarn, but one from each color. If you changed colors, make a granny square from each color or type of yarn that you use this year. And if you are using natural fibers and acrylics or synthetic fibers, just kind of keep those separate. Yes, still make a granny square, but your natural fibers, we're going to join with natural fibers, and your acrylics, we're going to join with acrylics, just so you can wash them both appropriately and easily. And that is something we can do all year long, just using up your scraps of yarn that you have this year. So here are my yarn scraps so far, and you're just going to make a granny square. And also what you want to do is use the same size hook all year long. So I'm just going to be using a 6 milli, and then whatever yarn I'm using, I'm still going to use a 6 millimeter crochet hook so that all of our squares turn out to be the same size, even if we're using a thinner or a thicker yarn. I'm going to join my granny squares all in a row because it is a rainbow. Who wants to waste a rainbow? But in the tutorial, I'm going to show you how to join on one side like this, and then starting a new row and then joining on 2 sides. So you'll be able to join all of your granny squares up super easy. So I'm going to start with orange. So for my granny squares, I'm just going to be doing a chain 3 ring to start. So chaining 3 and slip stitching into that first stitch or first chain and forming a ring with a slip stitch. That's just so I don't have to worry about my granny squares coming apart at the center as it gets really big. In the washing machine, there can be a lot of tension on those centers of your granny squares. So I'm just going to do a chain 3 ring for mine. And I'm going to hold that tail and work over it, so I also don't have to sew in the center tail for all of my granny squares. And my corners are a chain 2 and just 3 sets of 3 double crochets for the sides. I'll also link my super slow-mo granny square pattern for beginners, my tutorial. It walks you through all of your options, changing color, using one color, the invisible join technique. I'll show you when I get around this first side. And you can check that one out, or if you're already familiar with granny squares, just make the granny square you're comfortable making. I'll just show you quick my tip for joining so you don't see that chain going up the side of your square. So when you've gone all the way around, I join with a chain 1 and then a single crochet into the top of our chain. Single crochet. Just like that, and now chaining 2. I do a nice short chain just so it doesn't get big and lumpy. Going all the way up, it kind of hides that chain a little bit better. You can decide to turn your work or not. For mine, I'm just going to be putting all my stitches on the same side because I'm not changing colors. If you're changing colors for your granny squares, definitely turn your work. This way around, it doesn't totally matter, so I'm not going to turn my work. You can pause your video and get your granny square done to whatever size you like, and I'll meet you back for the second granny square. So here's my 3 rows. It's about all the yarn I have for the granny square. So I'm just going to do 3 round grannies for my mood blanket or my memory blanket. So I'm going to chain 2 to finish off and then just slip stitch into that chain. 2 strands on my hook, so slip stitch to join, and chain 1 to secure your yarn. And then cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in later. And that's our first one. And now we want to get the next one done. The next one is a smaller scrap. I don't have enough yarn to go all the way around to make it the same size. So for my blanket, I'm assuming this is going to happen more often than, or quite often. So what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to use my white yarn to finish off the squares that I don't have enough yarn to make them all 3 rounds. So all my squares are going to be 3 rounds, starting out with my normal color and then, or the color of my scrap, and then just finishing with the same color. So maybe you want to use black, maybe you want to use beige, whatever you have a lot of yarn for. And how I'm going to do that, I'm going to just keep going until my scrap is a bit, or my tail is a bit shorter. And I'm going to join just with a magic knot. So to do a magic knot, wrap your new yarn around your old yarn and just make a regular knot. And then wrap your old yarn around your new yarn and make a knot. I also have a tutorial for this magic knot if you want to see it like slower. And then you just pull those 2 together and pull your tails like that, shrink it down. And now you can cut off those tails right at the knot, right down here. Of course, you can sew in your tails if you feel like it. And now I'm just going to keep going, and I'm going to get that knot inside a stitch. Oh, that's pretty good. There. So we don't see it. And now I'm just going to finish off this round with the white yarn. Well, I'm going to finish off a couple sides. I'm not going to finish off the whole square because we're going to join as you go. So for the first 2 squares, we're just going to be joining on one side. So I'm going to get 3 sides done. So there are my 3 sides. Now we are ready to join. So I'm going to grab my first square and just make sure that your edge, your pretty little V's are facing up, your pretty stitches. So that is the back, and this is the front. And how I like to do my join as you go, I put my finished work on top and I work into it down below, just like this. So I'm going to start with a chain 1 and then into this corner space. I'm just going to put my hook down into that corner space and bring my yarn back up and slip stitch to join. So we're doing our slip stitch to join. Our slip stitch counts as our chain, so we're doing a slip stitch instead of a chain. So we still have 2 chains, just one is a slip stitch, if that makes sense. And now into the block we are working on. So just let our finished block hang. Into the block we're working on, 3 double crochets. So just like we normally were. Now lay your block up top. Make sure it's not twisted. Pretty side is still facing up. And now we're just going to go into the next space right here. So put your hook down into your work. Bring your yarn back up and slip stitch. Now you can let that block hang and go back to the square we're working on. 3 double crochets into the next space. And depending how big your granny squares are is how many of these spaces along the side you'll be joining into. So there's my 3 double crochets, my granny stitch. So now down into the next space, just put my hook down, bring your yarn back up and through and slip stitch to join. And now we're in our corner space right here. So 3 double crochets into our corner space. And you can let that granny square just hang. We don't have to hold on to it. Just keep it out of your way. Like that. Lay everything down nice and flat and put your hook down into that corner space to slip stitch and chain 1. So we did a slip stitch and a chain 1. So it still counts as our regular chain 2. And now we're just going to slip stitch into the top of our chain to join. So slip stitch to join. And chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up, your yarn through, and snug that down to secure. So there are our first 2 granny squares joined. So for mine, I'm going to start joining my next one right here. So let me get my granny square ready. So now my next granny square is ready to join, and you might want to just make all of your granny squares in a row first of all. But just for the tutorial, I'm going to show you how to start a second row and then how to add or how to join on 2 sides, which is all you're going to need to know for this join as you go granny square crochet along blanket. So we're just going to start in, we're going to join our second row. So I've finished 3 sides of the 3rd round. So I've done my 3 double crochets into that corner, and this is where I started on this side here. So this side, it only has 2 rows. We're going to do our 3rd row joining, and the only difference, instead of just joining straight into the orange, we're going to jump over and join kitty corner. So whenever we're joining or starting a new row, we're just going to join into the kitty corner or the opposite corner right over here, just to kind of keep a smaller or a tighter join in those corners. So do your slip stitch and chain 1, and now just finish off this corner with our 3 double crochets. And I'm just letting those other squares hang down. So there's our 3 double crochets. Lay everything nice and flat, and now we're going to go right into this space after our corner. So we did the corner on our new square. We're going to go into the space after the corner on the square that we have finished. So slip stitch to join, and then working right back into our square. And this yarn ran out. That's why it's white yarn now. I didn't have enough scrap to do the full square. So there's our 3, laying everything flat, going into the next space, and bringing the yarn back up and slip stitching, and then working into our corner with our last 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Slip stitch into the corner space of the block we have finished, or the block we're joining to. Chain 1, and now we're going to slip stitch into the top of our chain to join. Just to finish off, top of our chain, we want 2 strands on the top of our hook. This yarn's a bit splitty. There we go. So slip stitch to join and chain 1 to secure your yarn, and then cut that yarn off, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up, your yarn through, snug that down to secure. And now I'm going to show you how to join on 2 sides. So for our next square, I've just done 2 sides of round 3. So there's our 2 rounds, and then the 3rd round on 2 sides, because we're going to be joining for the 3rd round. So we're going to start by joining into our first corner right here. I'm just going to slip stitch and chain 1, just so we have 2 stitches for that corner. You could also chain 1 and then slip stitch and keep going. It doesn't matter. Either way you do it, whatever's more comfortable for you. And now our 3 double crochets into the square we're working on. Lay everything flat, slip stitch into that next space. 1 little slip stitch, and 3 double crochets into the next space along the side. Lay everything flat, and we're going to go into the next space right here and slip stitch. And now into our corner space on the block we're working on, or the square we're working on. We're going to do or start our corner, so 3 double crochets. Lay everything flat. Now we're going to go kitty corner. Remember, we're always going kitty corner if we have a choice. So we're going to go straight into this orange square. We're going to slip stitch right over there. Just pop your hook in and get that yarn to come back up. Just like that. And slip stitch. And chain 1. And now into that corner space, I'm just letting everything else hang down. I'm just working into the square we're working on. So 3 double crochets into that same corner space to finish off our corner. Now I've run out of the blue yarn, so there's my new yarn coming through with that magic knot. Lay everything flat. Get your hook out of the way, so bring your hook down and go into that next space right after the corner of the block that we've already joined. So slip stitch into that space and then jump straight over to our 3 double crochets into the block we're working on. Lay everything flat, and we're going to go into this next space. So slip stitch into the next space. And you want your slip stitches to be small, a little bit of tension on your hook. And now we're going to finish off our corner. So 3 double crochets into the block we're working on. 1, 2, and 3. And into that corner space, slip stitch to join. And chain 1. Now we're going to slip stitch into the top of our chain to join. Right over here, we want 2 strands of the chain on the top of our hook. So slip stitch to join and chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. So that's what it looks like. You can just build your granny squares or join them as you go to build your Cal Blanket 2026. Or you can just make you can finish all of your squares and join them at the end of the year, whatever you'd like to do. So I hope this was helpful to you. Definitely give it a try. Let me know how it worked out for you in the comments if you have any tips or tricks. And I'm waiting for you in that video up there. Stay hooked.